everybody, and welcome to GameGuru Classic and GameGuru Max broadcast number 122 for a not quite live event where you will be able to ask your questions and get some kind of answer, but it will be via our Discord session that will be later on in the broadcast, which is live. You are not hearing me live. This is a pre-recording and the second part of what I would like to discuss in my absence. In brackets, Lee is on a well-deserved holiday, end brackets. We've been discussing the building editor, which is now available in the latest version of GameGuru Max. And if you want to find out a nice little hack how you can use the latest version of the building editor with the latest version of the DirectX 11 stable build, then check out the previous week's broadcast on how we go about creating that scenario. I resume from where I left off last time. Quite literally, you could actually connect last week's broadcast to this one and it is a seamless experience, because for me it is. But what I would like to discuss is the second section of the building editor, which of course is editing walls, and going into a little bit more details of what you can do. Now, if you remember where we was last time, we was in the building editor and we created something that looked a little bit like this. And just to give you a brief recap, we covered the create mode, where you can create rooms, and edit mode, where you can actually move what you've created around and make further changes, but you're still dealing with it on a per room basis, which is super flexible, because if you don't like where, say, this room is, you can just select this little ball and move it to there, and you've just completely changed how your building is laid out, so that when you come to file and export, that is now how your building is laid out. But what I'd like to talk about today is this third mode. Now again, when we was developing the building editor, we had quite a lot of things we wanted to do, quite a long list, and we needed to figure out, to stop the project taking 2 years to create, which things will be in version 1, which in version 2, and which in version 3. And strangely, the ability to manipulate walls ended up in the version 2 list, and once we put it out to some internal testers, it became clear very quickly that it's completely impossible to release a building editor without control over the walls. And I'll show you why right now. Let's say this was your building, your ground floor of the building, and maybe there was a door here that led into this first room. What if you didn't want that wall there? So this room is like one large room in an L shape, for example. There was no way to get rid of that wall without making some, say, massive door around the edges. And sure, that is an architectural feature to have a door so big that it just cuts a hole through the whole thing. But really, there's also a scenario where this is actually a big L-shaped room, and you can do that with this third mode, toggle wall mode. You see, we've got rid of a lot of things because at this point we're not interested in textures, we're interested in walls. So just by clicking the wall we don't like, it hides it. If we click the same area again, puts the wall back. And that's why we call it toggle. Toggle so you can see it, now you don't. Now you see it, now you don't. The little ghost thing that you see, that's just for your benefit, so you know where the wall was, and if you then want to put the wall back, you can just click the ghost and it gives you the wall back. So for the purposes of the editor, you see the ghost, but in the actual level, you won't see this sort of white ghosty triangle. The upshot now is, of course, you've created a room that's an L shape. I'll just give you another example. Drawing on knowledge that we've done in the past. Remember, we could change the textures at the create level, so you don't have to change the textures later. So let's say I wanted a room here, about that big, and then continue it round a corner, just as big. And then we go into our toggle wall mode and hide it. So there isn't like a prominent, this is the main room and this is the sub room. They're both of equal size and stature, but now you've actually designed a rather interesting room. We can start here, we can go around the corner, don't need to do any clever silly things with doors and windows. It's just a great big L-shaped room. And that's really the power of the wall toggle mode. It literally is one click on, one click off, but the things you can actually do with it are pretty cool. And I'd challenge anyone to come up with designs of rectangular shaped architecture that can't be achieved for the most part, just hiding and showing a wall that you don't quite like the look of. So I'm just going to knock out something a little bit more unconventional than square things. Sorry, I pressed the wrong thing. So create mode, make a little stumpy thing there. Don't like the wall, so we get rid of it. Maybe create another thing like this. It comes right here, and I don't like that wall, so get rid of that. Maybe I want a wall here and then have a door in it like a closet. Well, remember, the foundation on which the building editor is built, it's room based. So it always starts off with the room you started with. So if I wanted a closet here, you'd argue that that closet was sort of like its own room, and you would be absolutely right to argue that. So the way you can deal with that, if you go to what this was originally a room, in edit mode you can change your original decision to make the room that big and make it a little bit smaller. And now you've got the space to go to create mode and create that cupboard that you wanted. And I'm making this distinction because it came up in testing. People trying to create cupboards and rooms and strange creations by hiding and showing walls and getting very confused. Don't think of it like a wall maker. If you had to make your building one at a time out of individual walls, it would take you longer than if you had to make the building out of rooms, and that was why we went this direction. It's quicker to make buildings out of rooms than it is out of drawing out walls. And so now we go into our toggle wall mode, get rid of that wall, and now we actually have exactly what we wanted. A wall that cuts all the way across, and then all it takes is to, what would look good? Yeah, there you go. So we got a little room. And there you go, there's your cupboard. Obviously it's a massive cupboard, you can put a lot of shelves in here. But you get the idea. That's how you should approach this idea of the wall toggle. Start with rooms and make the rooms where you want them, and then use the wall toggle for refinement. To get rid of the walls, the last wall, maybe it's just one wall out of every room that you want to get rid of in order to create the designs that you want. And you can see I've just been knocking it out, and there's no design, there's no script to this, I was just drawing things out, but already look how complicated this room is. Let's say that's the outside. So the player's coming into this room. Already you've designed a room that is a sort of an atrium. You can go this way to some interesting things, then you can go around here, and then you can go down this corridor area, and then you've got a door which leads into an cupboard. That's basically the order of things. Start creating your rooms, shuffle your rooms around and edit them slightly with edit mode, and then you might want to remove a wall or two in order to create these interesting structures. So that's really the bulk of it. I could go into a lot more different examples of how you could use this. Some examples, if I just knock some up really quickly. Great big room, and then another room inside that room, and then you can use your wall toggle to remove these three walls. You've now actually created a standalone wall within a larger room. Once you've exported it, we just click on edit mode, it gets rid of the ghosts. Another thing just want to mention, you notice when we zoom a little bit closer, we're giving you independent control over the walls and these little corner pieces. And just to stretch out the broadcast for a sec, because literally wall toggle could have been done in about 30 seconds. Click it to switch it on, click it to switch it off. But it gives you an opportunity to show you how rooms, corridors and things are made up. And in order for all of this to work, so interior corners, like so, that looks really nice and seamless, and exterior corners, so the brick follows all the way around. A critical thing that we need, and you can go all the way back to FPS Creator, and we have the similar sort of thing, is what's called corner pieces. Corner pieces allow you to connect interior and exterior constructions. And because we wanted to create the toggle system to be as flexible as possible, we gave a separate ability to hide and show corners if you wanted to. So I can click this one, hide that, click this one, hide that. In this particular case, we don't need the corners. You could keep them. You could texture them all the same and they become columns in your room. But in this particular situation, I want to hide them. And so now when we go to edit mode, which gets rid of the ghost, because we don't really need to see it when we're not in the toggle mode, we've just created an independent wall. Now don't ask me why that's useful, I'm just showing you how to do it. Maybe there's lots of reasons why you want to create something like that. But it's just one of those lot of deeper levels that you can get into if you want to. And you can still, it still recognises it as a room within a room. So if you wanted to, you could select edit mode, select this room and change the floor to something else. So always think of it in that hierarchy. Start with rooms and then drill down into walls and whether they're visible or not. And just going back to what I was talking about with the columns, if I select this and go to toggle, and I untoggle what I just toggled before, which was these columns, as you can see, it's trying to respect what it had before, which was interior and exterior features. And we're going to talk about this next week. I just want to quickly show you that if you wanted to create a column, just texture all 4. It has a universal UV mapping system. So all the textures will, providing your texture is a seamless texture, if you're talking about custom textures, they will all nicely line up and you don't get any UV stretchy problems. So they will work, for the most part, nicely together. And I've just created a column. Just get rid of any ghosts. The reason I'm not really dwelling on this trick in order to create a column within your, well, it's certainly possible to do, but we have been talking internally that maybe you want more sophistication with your columns. And what I mean by that is, and we'll certainly discuss this probably in this in this broadcast actually, because I just realised it would be super useful as we've already started talking about doors. The full gamut of what you can do, and it actually bears on what I wanted to talk about next, which is this column. At the moment, we do have the ability to take a room and make it super useful if you can get inside that room. So we can add, say, a great big door, or a door that you can see into the room, or a door with a little window so you can see a little bit through if you put your head through the glass, and then a big solid door that you can't see through at all. And it takes care of the cutting hole through the wall. And if you change your mind, you can just move the doors as you might expect. Same with windows. You want to be able to put a window in so you can actually see through the window inside the room. All of that is sort of taken care of for you. But we did have this idea that this column looks really boring. It's, what is it, like 12 polygons a side or something? Yuck. Wouldn't it be great if you could have circular columns or wooden columns that are distressed, or bent columns, or arced columns for sci-fi levels, things like that. And so in addition to doors, windows and stairs, wouldn't it be great if there was another column, I'm not going to, another category, not necessarily just for columns, but for things that you want to add into your building. You don't want to wait until you're in the GameGuru level editor to add them. You want them part of your building, but they're not necessarily a door, a window or a staircase. They're just something like a nice column that you could break up and the scene and make your architecture a bit more interesting. And probably not even stopping at columns. There were suggestions from our internal team that you could click things to the wall, like some intricate paneling that isn't just like a flat polygon as we're using here. Albeit very nice with the PBR effects and stuff. We've made this wall slightly shiny. But what if you had geometric detail that you could stamp on? And as wide as that room gets, it duplicates the mesh over and over, so you get more interesting effects like that. All on our version 2/version 3 list, but would require an additional column. Something that we can sort of drag in and click these additional geometries into the scene. And so that's why we're not really going to sort of dwell on this sort of artifact you can create with the toggle system, because we're going to expand it to allow you to drag in more interesting meshes from your object library right into the building editor to create more interesting rooms. So I've started, so I'll finish. So one other thing, in addition to adding windows and doors, and it was something that again was sort of a version 2 feature, we moved it to version 1, which is the ability to have a bit of control over how you place your windows. As you saw, I just dragged in a window like that, and it goes anywhere. It's, you know, if you were designing a building, you'd never do that. That's probably a structural nightmare. What you'd normally do is you'd make them in a row, and if I try to line them up like 1, 2, 3, I'm not going to succeed, am I? They're all over the place, and look how long it took me to keep dragging one in. So I'm going to show you a trick. If you hold down Control and Shift, one of them duplicates what's already on your cursor, and the second one prefers an axis of alignment. So now if I try and drag in a window, just do that again. So drag it in first, so get a general area of where we're going to be, and there hold down Control and Shift. Watch what happens when I click. Sorry, I'm not a very good demonstrator. Drag it in, hold down both keys, click, and start moving. Notice how it prefers the axis alignment of going along. Delete to get rid of it off the cursor. And now, without me having to go back to the left-hand panel, it just remembered what I already selected, and it locked it in on that vertical position, so they're completely lined up. Certainly not lined up on this. Look, that brick is probably a course. This is half a course. This is nearly a course. And if I was a builder, I'd probably want to do a little bit so that margin and that margin and that margin are the same. And that's going to happen when we expand the grid system, which is a version 2 feature. I keep talking about version 2 features moved to version 1. That's a version 2 feature that stayed in the version 2 list. The idea that you can grid snap. So you can set an alignment and then you can click with a grid. At the moment, we've given you the idea that you can, for example, it moves across, but you could equally do this. Start here, hold down both, and move up. And again, it locks it perfectly on this axis as well. So you've got the up axis, you've also got the going across axis as well. But the grid thing, I think, will complete the picture. So those are the doors and the windows. And it goes without saying that I need to introduce you to the final category on the left-hand side, which is the staircases. So we've only got 3 here because we just wanted to populate the left-hand panel with something to get you started. If you wanted more, you click this, Add Object at the top. And you can see we've got a building editor library. We've tried to keep it consistent. As I said in the last broadcast, I think, the building editor tool is separate from the GameGuru Max software. The reason we've done that is we want to set up a precedent that if a new tool comes out, it's independent. It's a separate executable. It can run on a different monitor, and it can do sort of live communication with the core GameGuru Max editor. And it also means that if someone wants to create their own tools in the future, we have a separate template that you can use that when you've created it, looks like GameGuru Max, but isn't going to interfere or break the core product because it's a completely separate tool. And so we've actually taken a lot of our existing stuff, moved across to the toolkit, and eventually we'll create a template so you can make your own, if you want to, make your own tools. But in the meantime, we're actually lending a lot of the consistency from the core product, including displaying libraries. So this is the building editor library. We can look at all the doors. These are all the doors, by the way, that we've added metadata to and we've tested. So all of these doors will work in the building editor, and then when you drop them in your game, these doors work. So you can run up to the door opens. These are functional objects, and we've tested them. Same with windows. These are all the windows that we've added metadata to, so you can add those. And finally, staircases. So we've given you 3, but there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that are currently available in the object library. And I'll let you in on a little secret. A third-party artist is hard at work right now. Could already have finished by the time you actually listen to this broadcast on making more of everything. More doors, more windows, more staircase. That might come out as a DLC this side of Christmas, or if we want to add more to it because we feel like there's just not enough in the DLC, then that'll probably go on to next year. And when we think, right, yeah, that's a really good collection of doors, windows and stairs you don't necessarily want to create yourself in a 3D modeler, then you can get the DLC and get access to those. So yeah, that's how you can add to this library. And just to demonstrate it, I will select stairs, white brick. And just like pasting doors and windows, this locks not to a wall but to a floor. So I can select that one. Maybe I can have a different staircase oriented in the opposite direction. And I think this was a single story, wasn't it? No, this was just something I'm throwing together. If we go up a layer, there's nothing for that to connect to. So what we'll probably want to do if we add staircases like this is create a room. And as you can see, the staircase is clever enough to figure out that I'm a staircase, I need a hole in the floor so I can get up to it. And as this is a deep dive broadcast showing you all the goriness, I want to show you this, which is super important and absolutely critical if you want to create a building that makes any kind of sense. If I was on this floor and I was walking up the steps and then the steps just stop and the hole is up there, you can imagine the point was that you get to the top step, you're on the floor of the next room. The reason for this is it makes no sense to have a staircase of a certain height here, a staircase of a different height here, but all going up to the same first floor which is all on the same level. It's literally impossible. We did experiment with the idea of what's called procedural staircases, which would adjust their height, i.e. add more steps as it went up. But the problem with that is they were procedural staircases. They look like blocks and not very cool. And it became quickly apparent that people want real looking staircases in different styles for their buildings, which is why we went with the models rather than a procedurally generated one. And in order to aid in this completely ridiculous scenario where there's no way you can use this staircase in your building, we have this. Match layer height to stairs. If you look at last week's broadcast, we manually adjusted the layer height just for kicks and giggles. But that's not useful to us anymore. We want the layer height to respect the staircase we've just added. And so all you're going to do is select match layer height to stairs. There are no stairs to calculate layer height from, and the reason for that is we're currently on the first layer. So go down to this layer with the staircases on them. So now it knows, oh, there's some staircases, but look at the height of this room. It's far too high for my staircases. So all you've got to do is select match layer height to stairs on the layer that has the staircases on. And the layer height is now grayed out. You can't control it, mess with it. But now it's going to respect this staircase. So when we go up a layer, there's a little bit of a gap now, but rest assured, for this staircase at least, it lines up perfectly. So you start at the bottom, you run up the staircase, and by the time you get to the top, the player capsule, which is your physics for your player, drops nicely onto that. The reason why there's discrepancy, and I've mentioned it just a couple of minutes ago, between the two holes is this staircase is a different height than this, and this tick box, which is on this first layer, can only choose one staircase. It can't actually bend the height of that floor from that to that. So effectively what you've got to do is choose the staircase you want for this particular layer. So with only one kind of staircase, you can have multiple kinds of staircase, just make sure that they're all the same height. And one of the things we'll be doing when we add more doors, stairs in particular, is making sure there are categories of heights. So you know there's a lot of staircases that can actually be on the same layer and be placed where you want them, but have different styles. So if we go up now, you'll actually see that that lines up nicely with that floor, and the player can run up and down those stairs. So I think that was really important to mention. It could easily be skipped, not necessarily knowing why you've got layer height control here, but then this tick box, that's kind of what it's for. So the ordering, let me just do a new one just to show you what's going on. Let me just delete that for a sec. Yeah. And then let's say we create a new room. So we knock out a room. The order is then, okay, I'm going to drop in a staircase. I'm going to make sure for that level I'm ticked. So make sure that is ticked, and then that staircase will change the height of that layer. And then as you build layers on the ground, the first floor, you got your hole, and then if you add a staircase on the second one, and then go up to the third, you create another room. Yeah, this is where edit will come in. So you can get the door a little bit bigger, and grab hold of it, and you've got the hole on the second floor, and so on and so forth. Just make sure that the match layer to stairs height isn't on the layer you're going to, but on the layer where the staircase exists, and make sure it's always ticked, and same and so forth. So yeah, I think there is a, if we go down to that first layer, match layer height to staircase, I think it's because there's a manual intervention there, that's why it's not working. But let's say I start from scratch, it should make it a little bit more sensible. That you create a room, stage 1, add your staircase, stage 2. You'll notice as well the layer height dropped because by default it matches the layer height to the staircase. I think that last level that we had was a bit of a hodgepodge, and I think we probably revealed some sort of bug where you start off matching the layer height, then you manually adjust the layer height, then you add some stairs on the second floor, and then you try and restore the matching of layer heights, and I think that's where a bug might emerge. But certainly the way we've been testing it is create the room first, makes sense, then drop a staircase in, it defaults to change the layer height, then go up to your next one, you can see where the hole is, and then you can create another room on top of that, and then you can add a staircase somewhere else. Maybe that leads off to some more interesting places. Then you go up another layer, and then you create another room, and that might go all the way across here. And remember, that staircase belongs to the last layer, and this is a new layer, so you can use a different staircase if you wanted to, maybe this one, which then when you go up, it leads to another layer, and you see that's a different kind of hole. And voila, so you can go through there and across here, and then down that staircase, and then through this hole down to that staircase, and you're on the ground floor. So that's generally the order in which you will strata your staircase choices. And providing the staircases are of the same height, you can have lots of different staircases on the same layer. I would like to show you another trick which is really cool, where you can actually have two staircases of different heights perceptibly on the same level, but they aren't. You're actually subdividing a layer into two layers, and one half of your design is using the lower level, and the second half of your level is on the higher one. It sounds a bit complicated, but I probably need to do some practice before I can condense it into the quick, snappy broadcast demonstration that I know you want. But maybe that's a challenge I can put out to the community. Are you able to create a layer with staircases of two different heights that when you finish creating your building looks right and makes sense? So I'll put that as a little challenge out there. I'll be sunning myself up, so I'll not see the results of that challenge, but when I get back, I'm so looking forward to seeing if anyone picked up on it. I managed to do it myself and it was pretty cool, but it's a very tricky, clever, sly way of doing it. One clue I will give you, just go back down to the floor. One clue I'm going to give you is, why would anyone create a room with a layer height that's really, really small, in fact much smaller than the height of a human being? And I'll leave you with that. So this is the second of 3 deep dives into the building editor, and the second of 3 pre-recorded broadcasts where I am not physically here. Yes, this is a recorded announcement. But we have tagged on a live Discord chat to the end of this with an expert in the building editor, and we're very happy to answer any questions that are building editor related. But please ask any questions, and if the answer is available, then you'll get that. The Discord itself will probably be 10 to 15 minutes in length, because you know people got to eat and go to bed at some point. The broadcast link is going to be in the broadcast description below. So this is where you need to get to. Once you follow that link, go down to livestream-questions, where you'll be able to ask your questions and hopefully get some cool answers. So just click on this link when you see it in the description, it will take you right there. As for me, I will bid you thank you very much for listening, and I will be available next week again virtually in the third and hopefully final pre-recorded broadcast at 7 p.m. GMT on a Wednesday. So until then, I shall say thank you for your attention, and go chat to Zach on Discord. Until next week, I'll say goodbye.